to What's Hot Harlem America with G. Keith Alexander. The crossroads where culture, lifestyle, and community meet, all hosted by the legendary New York radio TV personality and proud Harlem American, G. Keith Alexander.
Yes, well, thank you very, very much. That is who I am. Welcome to What's Hot Harlem America with G. Keith Alexander. And wherever you are, I appreciate you for joining our neighborhood as we hang out together in Harlem, America. Now, today in the What's Hot Spotlight is Will Roundtree, a Fico certified consultant and author of 2 books, Credit is King and Full-Time CEO. Will Roundtree has helped numerous families successfully restore credit, become homeowners, obtain financial freedom, and become flourishing business owners. And Harlem America Digital Network is fortunate and proud to have added to our weekly podcast lineup his new empowerment show, Full-Time CEO, the SHIT They Won't Tell You. So it is my distinct honor and pleasure to say that Will Roundtree is What's Hot. Hello, Will. How are you?
How you doing there, GK? I'm doing incredible. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. I'm so glad that you had time to join us today. I thought that this would be wonderful to let so many of our listeners in on some of the financial strategies and what you do as far as empowering our community so that they can live impactful lives and also be on a journey to becoming millionaires like you. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So how have you been holding up lately with this COVID?
You know, I've been doing well. I'm big into, just taking care of my body, eating right, taking my vitamins, making sure, getting, just the proper preventative maintenance along with, protecting myself, my family, and doing as much as we can, so it's because no matter how safe you are, it's still sometimes that 1%, that sometimes could potentially put you in harm's way, but, definitely doing the best that I can.
For sure. Well, that's great. So, I'd like to start off with, why don't we take the Wayback Machine and go back to your early childhood and give us a little, a little synopsis of what it was like growing up as Will Roundtree.
No, so I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If anybody's familiar with the Midwest, real blue collar area. Both my parents, well, my father was from Mississippi, my mother was from Milwaukee, so they were both blue collar workers, hard workers. So growing up in Milwaukee was a little bit different because in Milwaukee, like people who aren't familiar with Milwaukee, like the crime was really bad. So growing up around me or just around the city, we saw, the influences of drug dealing, gangs, pimps and all of that lifestyle was very prevalent back then. But, my parents did a very good job, or to the best of their ability, of, keeping myself and my brother and sister out of harm's way of that. And so, I grew up, had a typical childhood, was into sports. I thought I was going to be an NBA player. So I found out I wasn't going to be 6 feet tall. And so, growing up in the snow, like Milwaukee often say, like, I was thankful being born from Milwaukee because it gave me a certain grit. It gave me a certain toughness. Mm-hmm. And and it was partially what helped establish my work ethic, because my grandfather on my mother's side, who lived in Milwaukee at the time too, he was an entrepreneur. I didn't realize that as a child. I mean, he was someone who had maybe a 5th grade education, but he owned over 45 homes. He owned a car wash at one point. So, and I had an opportunity of working with him every single summer. And I can remember getting my first job at the age of 11, G. Keith. I was a golf caddy. So hard work just ran in my family. And and then, did all the typical things, went to school, was a straight A student. And then by the time I got into my sophomore year, my parents actually moved me to Mississippi to kind of get me out of the environment, because literally everyone who I grew up with in Milwaukee on my block has either went into jail, is probably no longer with us, due to death or violence or different things. So it was definitely a blessing and a foresight that my parents had in moving me and just giving me a culture shock and a different atmosphere growing up as a teenager.
I see. I want to touch on that a little bit more, but first, I want to say your wonderful sweatshirt that says "First Generation Millionaire" looks really great. However, your headphones are rubbing up against it, and it's causing just a little bit of yeah. Okay. Well, actually, I thought it was your wired headphones, but I see it's not. But
Right.
but in any case, so all right, so you worked, you did that, and then give us a little bit more. How did you progress?
Oh man, at what point? It was like, so growing up from Milwaukee, moved to Mississippi, uh, was in Mississippi, like I say, my sophomore year. And so imagine moving from the north, where it's, city life, the hustle and bustle every day, to moving to a town called Kosciuszko, Mississippi, on a farm with over 100 and maybe 10 acres, three houses, and and that's it. And so literally we lived off of the farm. I did everything you could think of that a farmer would do. My grandparents had livestock. We grew our own vegetables. We grew our own fruit. I'm 13 years old. I'm chopping wood. I'm cutting down trees. I'm tending to the garden. Shelled peas and shucked corn. Like
So
you
you were
name it, I
real.
did it.
So you were a real farmer, uh, uh, with
Minus the
all of,
overalls.
right.
Minus the
Okay.
overalls.
And you didn't have straw in your mouth or anything like
No,
that.
I didn't have that. Nope.
Oh, okay. All right. So, how did you get to become interested in? Now, you mentioned that someone in your family had 45 houses and everything, but you as an entrepreneur, you didn't. How can I say? You had to start from scratch. That wasn't handed down to you or anything like that.
No,
So
not
tell
at
us.
all.
So tell us your struggle in becoming who you are now.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to like I mentioned, was told go to school, get the good grades, go to college, get a good job. So I attempted to do all of that. I was actually a straight A student all through school. After I graduated high school in 1997, I moved back to Milwaukee, literally the day of my graduation. Attended college, started to go, and I actually went to be a computer programmer because computers were booming at the time. I thought I was going to be the next Bill Gates or something of that nature. And so, but what something happened, G. Keith, while I was in college, I had an epiphany. I remember being in my economics class, and my mind was always different. Like I always felt like I didn't belong with a lot of my peers because of the way I thought. And I
Mm-hmm.
can remember being in my economics class and just thinking like, and I asked my teacher, will this path help me to become wealthy? And he didn't understand my question. And he was like, well, if you go through college, you get a good job. And this, I'm like, no, I want to make a lot of money because, again, I wanted to be an NBA player, but I wasn't tall enough. So he told me no. And I actually dropped out of college that very next week. And so dropped out of college, started, working. And during this time, I'm working at a company. I thought I was making good money. I'm 19 years old, making about 50,000 a year. You couldn't tell me nothing, G Keith. And so I'm working there, and I was at that company for about 8 years. And this was a company that had been around for over 75 years.
Mm-hmm.
And one day we went to work, and the doors were locked. And so the doors were locked. I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? I really didn't have any other skill set. Thought I, tried to go back and work with my grandfather, but He had his own, business to mind. And so fortunately enough, I actually got introduced to entrepreneurship. Didn't even know what it meant at the time, but I got introduced to a network marketing company. And in this network marketing company, they did direct sales. So for those who don't know what that is, it's similar to like Avon or Amway or something of that nature. And so I got in there and I thought I was going to make a lot of money. Didn't make a lot of money, but the one thing it taught me, G. Keith, was
Good.
personal development. And for those who aren't familiar with personal development, it's merely where I went through this metamorphosis of becoming a different Will, a different version of Will Roundtree that people were not accustomed to. And essentially I had to change my mindset. I had to change the way I think because, you know, as I think back, growing up in school, nobody teaches us life skills.
Hmm.
Nobody teaches us critical thinking. Nobody teaches us to set goals and to change your attitude. But that's what the personal development did for me. So going through, that progression and that transition, fast forward to and this was around 2003. So around 2005, I was starting to see a little bit of success within that organization. And my mentor at the time, he said, Will, we're building a team in Las Vegas. I really think that you should head out there and kind of be our face. And at this time, I'm single, young, no kids. And literally I said, let's do it. I just heard Las Vegas. I didn't, that's all I heard. And so I literally bought a one-way ticket. But here's the thing, I didn't have any money, G. Keith, because from when I was working at that company and it shut down,
Hmm.
I actually had to move back in with my parents at the age of 24. And I
Wow.
can remember vividly right now carrying my big screen back into my parents' basement. And I'm like, I have to do something different with my life. So when I got the opportunity to move to Las Vegas, I took it, but I had to borrow $500 from my mentor. And
Mm.
so borrowed the $500, or he loaned me $500. And prior to moving, I had another mentor who taught me, he said, Will, eventually credit will become the new dollar. Didn't know what he meant by that, but when I got to Las Vegas, I quickly found out. I couldn't rent an apartment without, putting three times the deposit down. Couldn't purchase a vehicle because my vehicle in Milwaukee was in repo status. So I
Ugh.
literally moved out there with $500 that I borrowed. I had a garbage bag full of clothes and a couple books. I maybe had about two or three books that I was reading at the time. And so got to Las Vegas, and literally it was like, this is my only option. I have no plan B. I'm going to figure this out and make it work. And I remember telling myself every single day, G. Keith, I would rather live in a shelter in Las Vegas than move back to Milwaukee,
Really?
because I was determined to figure out, this path or this journey. And I never would have imagined that it would turn into where I am now. And so while I'm in Las Vegas, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And I kept getting the same results. And I started to link everything back to my credit. Everything that I was trying to attain, my credit was blocking me. So I took it upon myself really to learn as much as I could about this credit thing, because back in 2005, like credit was almost kind of like a taboo dialogue. Our parents didn't teach us about it. They didn't talk about it in schools. Some people didn't even know what credit was. And so I remember I would go to the libraries, I would go to the internet cafes, and I was doing a lot of this all while I was sleeping in my car, learning this information. And so fast forward, once I actually started to learn the importance of credit, the power of credit, I remember around 2008, I really started to see how it could work. I remember purchasing my first vehicle without having a cosigner. Purchased that vehicle without putting any money down, and that blew my mind, GP, because I was always under the presumption that you had to put money down on a vehicle. But it was like, no, as long as you have good credit, you don't have to put money down on a car. So then I said, you know what, my next goal is I want to see if I can buy a house. And so because I was fortunate enough to find a job in Las Vegas at the time where I was selling internet advertising. It was a primarily commission-based job, but because I was so driven, I was actually able to make over six figures at this sales-based position was able to save enough money, and I was able to purchase a home in 2013. And coming from where I come from, being a homeowner was something that it was almost like a mirage. I thought it was impossible. And so once those two things happened, I said, you know what? This is something that I got to with other people.
Now, that's an incredible beginning, an incredible story of how one can turn their life around. So we're going to take a short break. Pardon me, I got a little frog in my throat. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Mr. Will Roundtree. And remember, his show is on Harlem America, and it's called The Full-Time CEO, and it's the what?
SHIT, they don't tell you.
We'll be right back. Welcome back. We're here with Mr. Will Roundtree, and he told us a very interesting, inspiring story of how he wanted to sit down and figure the whole credit game out by himself. And he has figured it out, I'll tell you that for sure. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about his journey towards becoming a first-generation millionaire.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, once I was able to purchase that home, I just really wanted to share my story and my journey. Kind of like when you find that movie, you want to share the movie. Like, hey, you got to go watch this. So I was like, look, have you guys heard of this credit thing? And so, what I would do, G. Keith, is I would actually try to talk to friends, family, and relatives, and ask them about their credit and this, that, and the third. But I quickly found out, G. Keith, that's not a topic that a lot of people want you to know about.
Right.
It's like people don't want you to know their financial business, and I understand that. And so I decided, you know what, I'll just go out and start doing workshops. I don't even know what possessed me to do that, because anyone who knows me, like, you couldn't get me to speak in front of a crowd of one person, let alone try to gather a group of people. And so I remember just, contacting different realtors and working with them because they would host different home buyer workshops. And when I started to see just the power of helping, a single mother purchase their first home, or helping someone recently out of bankruptcy get back on financial path, or someone who, wanted to, whatever their goal or dream was, be able to accomplish that because they were able to change that one thing that was always taboo in the Black community, and that's credit and understanding finances and money. I was like, you know what, I want to be able to do this on a larger scale. And so I can remember, you know, um, linking with different individuals and trying to get it and trying to get my message out. And so I was fortunate enough to build just a platform of teaching people about credit. And so when people refer to me, they're always like, "Hey, you're the guy that fixed credit." And I'm like, "No, I like to consider myself more of an educator, because I never got into this, G Keith, to be a credit repair company. My focus was always to educate people on credit. Now,
Hmm.
the restoration of it was just a byproduct. I wanted to teach people because there were so many misconceptions of what credit is, of people not understanding it. And once people actually started to see that we use it in our everyday lives, like, think about this, GK. Our insurance rates is tied to our credit scores.
Hmm.
You know, employers run your credit. And this particular scenario blew my mind. I had a client, a parent who I was working with, who could not rent an instrument for her daughter because she had bad credit. So imagine, potentially her child dreams could have been shattered. Maybe she would have grown up to be the next, great jazz player, whatever the case may have been, but potentially had that stunted because her credit was not in position. And so I really made it my mission to go out here and educate people, because I was able to see firsthand the power of what having great credit can do. Remember, I bought a car with no money down. I was able to become a first time homeowner. And then once I started to learn and understand credit from the business side, I started to do a little bit more research and found out that most successful entrepreneurs have been able to grow their businesses and their empires and their net worths all by leveraging credit. But here's why I think that, a lot of people in our community have not been able to properly prosper off understanding these concepts. Because when we hear credit, we think of the word debt, G Keith.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And debt is that dirty word that we run away from. Until I listened to an audio by one of my mentors, my virtual mentors, I always say, Robert Kiyosaki, and
Oh,
he talked
yes.
about there's different types of debt, and there's a difference between structured debt and unstructured debt. And we in our communities, we've just been privileged to understanding unstructured debt. And for those who don't know what that means, that's where you literally have everyone in the house, including your dogs, trying to pay a mortgage we can't afford because we didn't understand how money worked in our communities. And then you have what's called structured debt, which is where you're able to leverage credit to go out there and acquire assets, such as investment properties, such as buying businesses and different things like that. And then I read a statistic that blew me away, G Keith. And that's when I said, you know what? I know I have a purpose of sharing this information. 98% of Fortune 500 companies leverage credit to run their businesses.
Mm.
And I was like, wow. And I have this saying where I say success leaves clues. That was a clue for me, G Keith. So I wanted to take that information along with everything I had learned about credit and everything that I was doing my best to teach the communities or just anyone who would listen. And so I literally would just travel the country using my own money to create this platform and create a voice of being able to share information. And so originally I started off doing something along with a previous partner of mine. We would do what are called corner classes, where we would literally go across the country and we would do a free workshop outside with a whiteboard and teach people about credit and home ownership. So whether it was raining, whether it was 90 degrees with 70% humidity, like we were outside on the corners doing free classes. And we did this for about several years. And then from that standpoint, I wanted to make it a little bit more formal. And then I started hosting these events called Cocktails and Credit, which is where I would go into the cities and the communities again and really try to meet people where they are. Because I mean, one of the things I know about, our community and our culture, G Key, we love entertainment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'm included, and so I wanted to be able to make it fun because again, I understand sometimes we run away from talking finances, credit, home ownership, entrepreneurship, and business. But I also understand the networking aspect we enjoy because of the socializing aspect. So with my cocktail and credit concept is this is where we would go into a local establishment, typically a lounge or a bar. We would rent out the establishment and we would come in there and do a half networking event, half financial literacy event. And it seemed to work. And people were like, you're not worried about people getting drunk and trying to pay attention. And I never thought about that because I'm always that glass half full type of person, G Keith. Like
I
it's
understand that.
if I played the lottery, I'm expecting to win. so, and so I never think about the negative. And so started doing these cocktails and credit events. And I'm telling you, it took off like wildfire. And as I think back, just from my journey coming from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was told by the age 21 I'll be dead or in jail, to
Mm-hmm.
now literally traveling the country. I'm not a rapper, I'm not an athlete, I'm not in movies or entertainment, and seeing a line of people wrapped around the building coming to learn about credit, about home ownership, about entrepreneurship, about business. I mean, it was definitely something that a perfect script couldn't have even written a better script for what I've been able to see on this journey so far.
Well, you've just come off that tour, a 7-city tour,
Yes.
and it was in Atlanta where people were wrapped around the building, waiting to come see you.
Yeah, it was funny. When I was pulling up because the people were still in line, and I could hear people outside. I would let my window down, and it was like, and I would see people walking up who wasn't there for that uh particular event. And they were like, "Who's in town? Is it Diddy? Is it this person?" And so I was just taken back, and it was a bit emotional because again, at one point, from going from homeless to being able to have people flying from all across the country to come and hear me speak about something that has changed my life and that I'm just truly passionate about.
What are some of the issues that you have? Well, it's quite obvious that our community, we do have financial issues, but what are some of the strategies that you can share with our audience and your audience that have come to know you as being the full-time CEO? What are some of the strategies that you can share?
So, yeah, so the first thing is often talk about that how important credit is. Like that's the foundation of every strategy that I teach. Because here's the thing, GK, there's a lot of pundits who who talk against credit and say credit is bad, and that may be for a certain population, but for a lot of the people who I attempt to help, that's impractical. Here's why. Literally everything that we do, our credit is tied to. I already mentioned our auto insurance rates, home ownership, employment, auto loans. Like even for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur, think about it. Your credit is used every facet of that. Think about it. If you need to get a line of credit with a particular supplier or vendor to be able to have inventory, to be able to lease or rent a building, you may need work trucks or work vans, or if you want to get into trucking, in the trucking industry, the insurance companies run your credit, gas cars. So like understanding, like the first thing is I tell people like your credit is your lifeline. It is literally our digital fingerprint, as I like to call it. Because then from that standpoint, then understanding how credit can be used. So from that standpoint, because there may be someone listening saying, well, my credit is not in position. And this is where I come in and I start teaching people and the different strategies and just the rights that we have when it comes to understanding how we have the right to actually dispute negative items off of our credit report. So I'll give you an example. A lot of times when people look at their credit, GT, just because there's negative things on there does not mean that the information is being reported accurately. So let's say a person defaulted on the credit card. Per the Fair Credit Reporting Act, we as consumers have the right to dispute any information that is inaccurate, incomplete, and unverifiable. So even though a person may owe, like let's say ABC company X amount of dollars, if the dollar amount that they're reporting is not being reported accurately, when you dispute the validity of how the information is being reported on the credit report, if they can't prove the accuracy down to a penny, they have to remove that off of your credit report.
Mm.
And so a lot of people didn't know that. A
Hmm.
lot of people, when they see that three-digit number, that does not define you. Like all credit can be rebuilt, restored, and repaired. Another strategy or just a tip that I talk to people about. Unfortunately, some people have had to go through what is called bankruptcy. I like to call that it's really restructuring of your debt. That's the primary premise of what bankruptcy is for. It's to restructure your debt. And so even
That's
if
a
you went through
that's a term that the corporations use,
all the
restructuring the
time,
debt. Yeah.
all the time, which is part of the debt structure of restructured debt, unstructured, and structured debt. But if you file bankruptcy, a lot of people assume that, hey, I just have to wait 10 years and hope that it falls off. That's not, you don't have to wait 10 years for a bankruptcy to fall off. You can actually dispute the validity of how the information of the bankruptcy is being reported on your credit report, and if they don't have the proper file dates. I mean, there's so many different reasons on how you can dispute information or different reasons on why you should dispute the information off of your credit report, because when you dispute it, and this is, I want to give this disclaimer, GT,
Mm-hmm.
just because you dispute it does not mean you do not owe the debt. So I want to make sure that that's clear. You're disputing the debt for the validity of how the information is being reported. So this way, it can assist you from a credit standpoint. Now, whatever monetary, penalties that you have with that creditor, you potentially still would have to work out a payment arrangement or whatever the case may be. But from the credit standpoint, the goal is that everything on the credit report has to be reported accurately. And then here's a statistic that blew me away: 70% of credit reports have errors on them.
That high.
70% of credit reports have errors on them. So a lot of people who typically don't check their credit report regularly possibly have things on there that is not theirs, does not belong to them. They could have been a victim of identity theft, or the information that they're reporting is completely invalid or inaccurate. And so that's the foundation of really where a lot of the principles that I teach start at, is really understanding credit, how to maintain it, understanding that building our children's credit. And then I often talk about just the misconceptions of what credit is, or what we think it is, or even just the term credit repair. That's almost kind of taboo at some points, that people think it's illegal to repair your credit. It is not illegal. It's really just a strategy, or a tool that is used to ensure the accuracy of what is being reported on us. It stays, clean, because again, your credit report is a direct reflection of how banks and lenders and people who we need just for our everyday living can determine and make a decision. Something as simple as your credit score can determine the school zone your kids go to school in. So we have to be very mindful of our credit, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Well, thank you for that. We're winding down to a break, and I just want to let everyone know that you can go to harlemamerica.com, and Will Roundtree has his new show called Full-Time CEO, the SHIT They Won't Tell You, and you can check him out. The show debuts, the show drops every Saturday, I believe, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Every Saturday.
Every Saturday. And you can check out more information about not just credit, but business, and how people have overcome their challenges in business. And we'll have more of Mr. Will Roundtree in just a brief moment. And we'll be right back after these few words. Thank you very much, Kevin. We're here with Mr. Will Roundtree. Will, talk to me about being the founder and top grossing principal of We Management Services. You've helped over 3,500 small to medium-sized businesses get access to over $300 million in business funding. Talk to us about that.
Yes. So I have this concept, G. Keith, called the triangle of wealth. And it starts with credit being the foundation. And then the next facet of that is funding. And so I'm a champion for entrepreneurs. But unfortunately, one of the things that prevents a lot of entrepreneurs from prospering or even getting their dreams off the ground is a lack of money. And so through some of these principles that I've been able to learn about, and understanding the power of leveraging credit, we've been able to help entrepreneurs understand a process called creative financing. And with that creative financing, throughout, over the past several years, with the stats that you just mentioned, we've been able to help people get upwards of about 300 million. It's probably higher than that now, since that stat was done for my bio. But it's truly empowering that, what I've been able to do to really kind of help shift the culture of how people look at entrepreneurship, because now it gives them a level playing field to go out there and start that business. to grow their business, to scale their business, and it's truly just nothing short of phenomenal, because it's something that most people didn't even think that was possible. And believe it or not, these things have been in our plain sight. We just have not been taught these things, GK. We haven't been taught about strategy of wealth planning. We haven't been taught the importance of taxes and tax planning and creating wills. But back to just understanding how funding works, that has been one of the fundamental vehicles that's even been able to assist me in growing my business, becoming a successful real estate investor. And so I just wanted to be able to use the concepts that I've been able to learn over my 18-year journey and be able to give back and teach people through these structured strategies on how to be able to grow their wealth portfolio, their net worth, and literally change the entire financial trajectory of their family. But more importantly, even just giving them new information that they can now pass on so that they can teach their children.
Tell them, excuse me, tell our listeners and viewers, because you hear this all the time about banks being Fico, whatever. What is a certified Fico consultant?
so Fico is, the conglomerate, or the company in layman's terms, that people are familiar with, who has the algorithm that creates our credit score. And so at one point, there was actually a time where Fico, the actual company, will let you take a certification, essentially being able to say you're knowledgeable to speak about credit. And so that's probably the only piece of paper I have on my wall, because I don't have the PhDs and all of that stuff. So I was very prideful of my Fico certification certificate. But essentially, it just gives me some form of credibility to be able to go into certain rooms and be able to be able to speak to people about the importance of credit, how credit works, understanding credit, the power of it, talking about the myths, so the misconceptions, as I often talk about. And fortunately, banks utilize our FICO scores when it comes to being approved for a home, for a mortgage, for an auto loan, for a credit card, for a line of credit. And so it all really just played together. And that's why I often say that our credit is our lifeline, whether you just want to be, someone who is not an entrepreneur, and for my individuals who want to become entrepreneurs, who have businesses, like your FICO score literally can make or break or determine whether your business can grow and scale or even get off the ground.
Being an author of, pardon me, an author of 2 books, one, The Credit is King, and the other is The Full-Time CEO. You've just spoken about the credit is king in our journey from your beginnings up to now. Tell us about the full-time CEO and the SHIT. They won't tell you.
Yeah, so my second book, Full-Time CEO, the SHIT, They Don't Tell You. Interesting story how I actually came up with the title. One day I was watching something on the internet, and there was a book that had an expletive in there. And he mentioned the reason he put that on the title cover was because he wanted something that if a person picked the book up, he wanted to get your attention.
Oh, yeah.
And so it kind of rang a light bulb in my head. And I was like, you know what, let me see if I could try something here. And I knew I wanted to write a book about entrepreneurship, but I wanted to write about the unglamorized side of entrepreneurship, G. Keith, because most people, we just see the champion. We just see the person who's holding the belt and the trophy. We don't ever hear about the journey and what it took, the experiences, or some people call them failures, it took to get there. So I wanted to write about that side of it, and I used it in a format to even kind of tell my story about my journey and what I went through over this 18-year path. And again, with the title, I wanted it to grab your attention. But what's so interesting, I remember writing the book and having my mother proofread it. And she was like, son, can you please take this out, out of the title? I was like, Mom, look, I have to keep it in there. And it just stuck. And a lot of people actually liked it. And so Although I don't condone people putting, those type of words in your title, but I had to be able to write it from my point of view, and be able to share it through my experience, and it's just something that kind of stuck with it. But people seem to love it in the concept, and just even the information that they get out of the book. And people have even told me that they've been able to literally change, their entire business trajectory, or even just get the inspiration to go start their businesses, or even just change their thinking, and now become goal oriented after reading that book.
Well, the title of the book and the title of the show, by softening it by spelling it SHIT, that sort of takes you off the hook a little bit. I mean, your mom, after hearing the promotion for the book and all that stuff, is she satisfied that it's not as
I think she just gotten so used to hearing me say it. It's like, all right, son, at least you're using it in a positive light. So I'm using it positively. So
well, okay, all right. Well, that's good. So you have any more tours coming up?
Yeah, so for 2022, we're looking at going on another tour, as far as hitting various cities throughout the country. We're going to put a little bit of a different spin, and then we're also going to allow people to be able to view, each location virtually. And so if someone can't make it to a Chicago, Illinois, if they can't make it to a Los Angeles or a Oakland or Miami, where we're going to be hosting these events in the upcoming year, we want to give people the opportunity to still get this information and get a virtual experience of what takes place. So yes, I definitely am going to be going back out on the road in 2022.
Beautiful, beautiful. And of course, Harlem America Digital Network is here to support you in any way we can, especially since you're part of the family now. You got this wonderful show that debuts, I shouldn't say debut, but drops on Saturdays. And so far you've had what, 3 shows already?
Yes, 3 episodes. Yes, sir.
3 episodes. And the fourth one, who are you going to have as a special guest?
Yeah, I think our upcoming episode is with Jacqueline Starr, commonly known as J Star, who is the personal barber for Floyd Money Mayweather. So I'm truly excited, and she has a phenomenal story. Phenomenal story.
And she has also helped to groom you on occasions as well.
Oh yeah, she tried to make sure I look halfway decent when I'm out here on the road.
Well, okay, so we can safely say that Will Roundtree has become a successful entrepreneur, first generation millionaire, and that's what you want to teach those people who are coming to your tours and reading your books and listening to your show on Harlem America. But tell me, what have you given up to become the Will Roundtree you are today?
I can tell you, when I first started this journey, G. Keith, I gave up everything. First, by literally uprooting my entire existence and moving to Las Vegas with no family. I moved clearly across the country. I gave up the happy hours. I gave up the spring break vacations. I went without television for 5 years. Well, for one, I couldn't afford television.
Really?
So yeah, I didn't watch television for literally 5 years. Didn't have vacation, didn't buy clothes. I mean, it was a lot I gave up. And so, and here's why too, G. Keith. I had to make sure that I created a mindset that was unwavering of what my end goal and my final destination was. And there are things, I call them distractions, that typically take us off our path. It's almost like trying to change your physique and going on this physical journey. You can be 2 weeks in, and then your friend calls you, hey, they have 25-cent wings. That's a distraction. And so I wanted to minimize my distractions because every minute that I was not spending sharpening my axe made it that much further from my end destination. And so I wanted to literally just put my blinders on and focus on everything that I had to do to get to where I am today. And so going to networking events, investing in myself, whether it was my health and education and going to conferences, reading books, hiring coaches. And I didn't have money at the time like that, but I understood, okay, do I, go to Starbucks every day, or do I invest in a book that can teach me to, open my own coffee shop? Do I, take a summer vacation, or do I invest in a coach who can ensure that I can take a vacation any day of the year? And so I really gave up, you know, this lifestyle of entertainment to be able to entertain myself anytime that I wanted to. And I tell people, over my 18-year journey, I failed 70+% of the time, but I also understood I only had to find one thing that would work and get really good at that. And so I was willing to go through that path and that journey to figure that out.
Will Roundtree. Wow. What an amazing concept to be Will Roundtree, the full-time CEO. We've got less than 3 minutes. In 1 minute, tell people why they should check you out every Saturday on the full-time CEO, the SHIT They Won't Tell You, on Harlem
Well,
America.
first of all, definitely. So first of all, because you're going to love the title of the show. So that's why they should first take it out. But more importantly, I get a chance to speak with some really incredible individuals, entrepreneurs, business owners, athletes, entertainers who've won Grammy Awards, all of this. But they get to share their story of the unglamorized side of how they got to where they are. But then I started to also see, GK, a lot of these people who have achieved 10 times the amount of success I've achieved have adopted the same principles and mindset that I've been able to go out here and teach. And so that's what let me know that I'm also on the right path. And so I definitely tell people you need to tune in because one, you're going to get some entertainment. Two, you're going to learn something. And thirdly, hopefully you'll go out and get inspired to go out there and even just attempt to accomplish whatever it is that you want to achieve or try to attain, and know that it is possible for it to happen for you.
Beautiful. And your books are on Amazon?
Amazon, audible.com, pretty much any online platform digitally as well as Audible.
Wow, this has been really a wonderful conversation. I don't want to say interview, yep. Wonderful conversation. Yep. And I certainly hope that we'll have more of them because our community really needs to know how to empower themselves to become successful entrepreneurs, successful business people, and how to manipulate. Well, maybe I shouldn't say manipulate credit, but how to thrive, with credit. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very, very much for tuning in. And this has been wonderful. Don't forget to go to harlemamerica.com. We've got some wonderful articles there. We've got some really wonderful podcasts there, celebrities. We've got some TV shows, you name it. Harlem America. If it's all about Harlem, then Harlem America is all about it. And we're trying to connect Harlem with the Harlems of the world. And we're talking to the world from the heart and soul of New York. I'm G. Keith Alexander. Thank you so very, very much. Have a great day and a better one tomorrow.